The clan Golden Century is often described as a period of profound advancement and development in clan culture, technology, and politics. While that is true, what is often overlooked is that these advancements were not evenly distributed across the 18 clans that still existed in 2830, while others like Clan Widowmaker ended up vastly overplaying their hands and were the odd ones out when the cards were turned. While today's battle mech, the Locust 2C, plays a very small part in clan history, it represents a legacy of one of the clans that didn't survive the Golden Century. Their warriors would not return to the Inner Sphere with Operation Revival, but a small piece of what they accomplished would. We often say on this channel that mech warriors and light battle mechs live short but glorious lives. That doesn't mean you can't look awesome in the time you have left. Let's see what this little monster can do. What was our clan? We were a clan of losers, an assemblance of individuals not worthy of usage by our conquerors, unlike the Widowmakers, nor worthy of their hate like the Wolverines. While our future is sealed as a clan and individuals, that of the clans is not. Our contribution to the clans as a whole will live on. I can only hope that our story lives on with it. Giovanni Mercedes, last loremaster of Clan Mongoose. Though many know that Clan Mongoose did not make it through the Golden Century, that outcome would have been considered very unlikely early on. While there was some minor conflict between Mongoose and clans like the Cloud Cobras, it wasn't anything that could be considered a threat to the clan's existence. Clan Mongoose had come out of Operation Klondike in pretty good shape. They had worked well with Clan Novacat and suffered fewer losses than many of the other clans in retaking the Pentagon worlds. Seeking to build upon success, Conloris behaved aggressively to maintain advantage through trade deals and obtaining technology like the Omnimech through successful trials. The Mongoose scientist caste was not idle either. Even though it wasn't an Omnimech, the Locust 2C rebuild of the tremendously popular and plentiful Locust light battlemech proved to be quite successful. It was introduced in 2832 and quickly became a dangerous addition to the Mongoose Tumen. Weighing in at 25 tons, the Locust 2C was 5 tons heavier than its inspiration, and every ounce seems to have been used to its greatest advantage. The Bergen 10 endosteel frame wrapped around the Magna 200 standard fusion engine weighed just 1.5 tons, shaving off valuable mass. Able to reach 129 km per hour on stable terrain, the Locust 2C was no different than most other light battlemechs that relied upon speed to survive. With 4 tons of compound alpha ferrofibrous armor, the Locust 2C was better off than many other light mechs, but still not able to survive sustained fire. At least that errant medium laser isn't enough to trip it up. The frame of the mech was designed to take advantage of a narrow profile, with the cockpit and gyro stacked in more of a head in front of tail alignment. The more prominent cockpit also allowed for better views for the mech warrior as the mech skittered across the battlefield. Sticking with what works, the Locust 2C had no hand or lower arm actuators, further enhancing the sleek profile. 10 double heat sinks were installed into the mech to make it possible to lean into an all-energy weapon build. The star of the show was the advanced Series 14A medium pulse laser set into the center torso, which provided not just a solid punch, but an accurate one that allowed the Locust 2C to hunt other light mechs, especially when they operated in packs. If you prefer your lasers red, you're in luck because the medium pulse laser was backed up by 8 Series 1 extended range small lasers split evenly between the arm nubs. While limited to close range, the potential output of this loadout is nothing short of terrifying. An alpha strike could do up to 47 damage to a target, which outpaced the damage output from many medium and even heavy inner sphere spec mechs. Now you might assume that firing all of those lasers would cause a little bit of a heat issue. However, as it turns out, firing everything while on the run only left the Locust 2C at 2 heat into the red. This provides no respite for the target, even if it does survive the first few shots. That was the cue for each of the different commands to advance into the battle, breaking off into bedlam. The whole scene before them exploded into an even more tense mess. The Jade Falcon forces, a healthy mix of Turkinas, Ion Sparrows, Locust 2Cs, Gyrfalcons, Shrikes, and other mechs, were pulling back against the superior forces of the horses, dozens of streaks of black and orange flame galloping across the field of battle. The air was thick with artillery shell and missile smoke, making the lasers visible as they lanced across the field even to the naked eye. On both sides, molten armor splashed to the ground in great rivers. Lone Wolf and Fox by Brian Young. Quickly producing the Locust 2C and other new pieces of tech, Clan Mongoose was in a good position to keep winning their way through the Golden Century. Unfortunately, the rather cutthroat business antics left the other clans increasingly annoyed, and one thing you definitely don't want in the world of clan politics is to end up the odd one out. That didn't work so well for the Wolverines, the Widowmakers, or much later Clan Bloodspirit and the Steel Vipers. Following a run-in with the Star Adders and then the Smoke Jaguars, the Khan of Clan Mongoose at the time sought to run under the skirt of the Clan Grand Council to prevent retribution. Khan Walter Martindale gave what was described as an impassioned speech at the council, bringing up precedent and commentary from both Alexander and Nicholas Kerensky in defense of his clan's actions. He accused the Smoke Jaguars of unjustly targeting Clan Mongoose at a time when his clan was already facing down conflict with the Star Adders. Instead of coming to the aid of Clan Mongoose, the Grand Council turned on them. Their attempt to seek protection under clan law was considered a sign of weakness that was quickly exploited by the Smoke Jaguar Khan Theodore Osis. He accused the Mongooses of treason and violating the clan way. After a demand for a trial of absorption, Khan Martindale could see this was not going to end well, so he began to prepare for a fight against both Cloud Cobra and the Smoke Jaguars. Across the worlds where there was a Clan Mongoose presence, fighting was fierce. In the Circe system, the Mongoose fleets crashed into Smoke Jaguar warships in what became the largest fleet battle in clan history. Approximately 30 warships, along with dozens of dropships and aerospace fighters, desperately fought for survival and in resistance to absorption. Though the Mongoose crews performed admirably and very nearly won the fight, several key losses tipped the scales and left the Smoke Jaguar fleet as the victor. The remaining 4 Mongoose warships were forced to surrender in the face of obliteration. News from Atreus and Kirin was not much better. Even with stiff resistance and heroic actions by Mongoose aerospace pilots, the Smoke Jaguars were able to wrestle control of the colonies on those worlds. On Fianna, the Mongoose defense was so tenacious that Khan Osis ordered an orbital bombardment to clear the way to land more Jaguar forces. With 3 clusters at his back, Khan Osis faced down the last of the Mongoose frontline warriors, not knowing that Khan Martindale had died in the earlier orbital strike. A last-ditch attempt by Mongoose Saw Khan Alana Nock attempted a flanking maneuver against a Smoke Jaguar left side, but their force was far outnumbered. Though they disabled or killed a great number of Jaguar mechs and mech warriors, it wasn't enough to break the assault. When the last of the Mongoose mech warriors were either killed or surrendered, it was effectively over for the clan. All of their holdings were controlled by other clans or the Smoke Jaguars, who offered up a quarter of the previously held Mongoose territory to the other clans in exchange for security guarantees and resources. The rise and fall of Clan Mongoose is an interesting side story in clan history, as they attempted to play a game that had been won and lost already by 2 previous clans. Giovanni Mercedes explained it succinctly in his writings. We did not fold under adversity. We continued on our way, watching the Widowmakers fall as we became the Good Clan. We were not the great innovators that the Coyotes were, or the leaders that the Wolves were, or the merchants that the Sea Foxes were. We did a little of everything well. We designed some new mechs, then got Omnis. We developed a superior ultra autocannon and later the targeting computer. Clan Mongoose was on the top of the world. Only we could not see the cancer in our midst. Giovanni Mercedes, the last loremaster of Clan Mongoose. In the end, Clan Mongoose disappeared without much fanfare and little note from the other clans. Possessions were distributed and everyone just kind of moved on. The surviving Mongoose citizens and warriors were folded into Smoke Jaguar's system, which was a generally crappy fate for everyone. Battlemechs like the Locust 2C were incorporated into the Smoke Jaguar Tumen and became quite popular, without any notable prejudice against it. Though Clan Mongoose was gone, the Locust 2C would live on. The enemy base was in sight now. Moxica saw no pickets. Just like typical barbarians, to assume they were safe. This would all be too easy. The entire star shot right into the camp. The Locust 2C and VTOLs began firing at any dark blue and gray Stormhammer machine that moved. Tents were trampled underfoot, fuel tanks created blooming inferno towers that lit up the night sky. Moxica had to give credit to the Freebirth. Starting that ridiculous game in the evening meant it was nightfall by the time his forces reached the camp, providing an extra layer of cover. Two Masters, Shrapnel No. 19 by James Hodjanowski. Appreciated for its speed and power, the Smoke Jaguars loved the Locust 2C. It quickly started to appear among the tumens of the other clans as well through trade and Azai Sorla. The production lines on Circe were busy even after the introduction of the Omnimechs and especially as the clan invasion began. The Locust 2C was just too good to be dismissed entirely as a second-line battlemech. Within the inner sphere, the Locust 2C was primarily spotted among the worlds already taken by the invading clans. Those who sought to liberate planets would inevitably run into this little monster. Though the Jaguars, Wolves, and Jade Falcons were the biggest users of the design, it would eventually end up within the Ghost Bear Tumen as well. Now, as good as the original loadout was, the Locust 2C did see some alternative variants over the centuries. The Locust 2C2 was a favorite of the Jade Falcons and featured an ER medium laser in the center torso along with 4 Streak SRM2s split evenly between the arms. The single ton of ammunition for the Streak launchers was set into the right arm, which was given case to prevent any unplanned rapid disassembly events. The rest of the machine was left untouched from the original, which of course is nice for BattleTech lore tubers who have to create mech info cards for each variant and affinity. Now what was I talking about? Oh yeah. While the overall damage potential for the 2C2 dropped significantly down to a possible 23, the range at which the mech could be dangerous was doubled. The Locust could operate comfortably in the 12 to 6 hex range while counting on those Streak launchers to pepper a target into submission, ideally while moving fast enough to avoid any incoming return fire. When looking at these two options, the original variant leans more into offensive power, with the drawback of having to potentially dance in short range with your opponent's weapons systems. The 2C2 provided a larger buffer zone at the cost of offensive punch. Either way, you're probably going to have a lot of fun until the music stops. He and Tomlinson were both in Locust 2Cs and were the fastest of the star. They were accustomed to hunting like pack animals, coming straight at the most vulnerable target from the sides, softening it up with well-placed blasts from their small laser arrays and medium pulse laser, then peeling off so the heavier hitters could come in and exploit the damage. With any luck, their role would be a brief engagement, ending with a simple mop-up job. Without Question, by Brian Young. If you're looking to bully someone from great distances, you would be happy in 2853 with the arrival of the Locust 2C3. It traded the smorgasbord of small weapons for a big honking ER large laser in the center torso. Thankfully, it's the clan spec version, which can hit for its 10 damage out to 25 hexes, so this Mechwarrior can be everyone's problem all the time. If necessary, 2 small pulse lasers split between the arms offer their accurate fire out to 6 hexes. Heat generation wasn't an issue for the 2C3, and it was most frequently spotted among clan Smoke Jaguar forces in the early and mid-clan invasion. This also explains why this variant ends up in the hands of House Davion forces following the destruction of the clan on Huntress. Through trade and salvage, it could even be spotted among the forces of the Free Worlds League and the Capellan Confederation. If you saw a clan-spec battlemech in that half of the inner sphere in the late 3050s and early 3060s, it was likely a Locust 2C. If you're still not happy, the plucky 2C did receive an obligatory heavy laser variant in 3064. The mech's hardware remained unchanged except for the addition of 2 more double heatsinks, bringing the total to 12. They would be needed as the 2C4 carried 6 heavy small lasers split between the arms to back up the center torso ER medium laser. Able to do 6 damage out to 3 hexes with a +1 to hit penalty, the heavy small lasers were powerful but risky shots. The total potential damage in an Alpha Strike was 43, which was just slightly less than the original 2C loadout with its ER small lasers and medium pulse laser. So one might reasonably ask, why would you take the 2C4 over the 2C OG? My response is, I don't really have a good answer beyond the somewhat cliche you have to go with what's available. You go to war with the Locust you have, not the Locust you want. That being said, I wouldn't give up the range of the ER small lasers for a possible 1 additional damage per laser at a +1 to hit penalty. I know I'm not the best at math, but even I can see that math isn't mathing. Math. The Locust 2C4 was produced by Olivetti Weaponry on Sudeten as part of Khan Pride's initiative to drastically boost the power of Clan Jade Falcon's Tumen before the renewed invasion of the Lyran Commonwealth. The Locust 2C was considered a comparatively less expensive option and that could be produced quickly to help fill the ranks of 6 additional second-line clusters. A majority of the newly produced Locusts were shipped to those clusters before things got spicy. Over time, the 2C4 ended up as salvage or Isorla, picked up by Clan Wolf, the Lyrans, and even the Comguard. Patricia saw the same problem he had spotted. The Locust battle mech had slugged it out with several squads of infantry, but now had broken free. It was heading to the rear of the Wyatt militia. There wasn't much there, just 2 squads of SRM-armed infantry and the precious sniper artillery piece. The Clan Locust wasn't alone. A battered squad of elementals and a unit of Purifier-armored infantry were punching through as well. If they made it, they could get under the firing umbrella of the sniper and rip it apart. Target of Opportunity by Blaine Lee Pardoe. Speaking of numbers that don't make sense, we have to go back in time by 4 years for the Locust 2C5, which debuted in 3060. The 2C5 is the Advanced Tactical Missile Testbed with 2 ATM-3s split between the arms and fed by 2 tons of case-protected ammunition split along with the launchers. An ER medium laser in the center torso offered its reliable damage and shared the range profile of the standard range ATM version of the munitions. While the ATM is always fun, the 2 tons of ammo instead of 3 is a bit of a bummer, and the total possible short-range punch with high explosive munitions and the ER laser only adds up to a possible 25 damage. The common theme here is that it's really difficult to top the original loadout. The Locust 2C5 was produced by Clan Wolf on Satellus, which was later nabbed up by the Ghost Bears, which gave the Bears their own dedicated source for the battlemech. The Locust 2C6 was first spotted in 3075 and was a dedicated infantry hunter. In that role, it was absolutely terrifying. With 3 heavy machine guns in each arm in an array, the 6 could mow down any infantry that peeked their heads out. It even had an extra half-ton of armor to help survive return fire, if there was any to return. With the way arrays work, the 3 damage per heavy machine gun could be quite painful. However, outside of its role as a hunter of infantry, the Locust 2C6 is out-Locust by most of the other variants in damage potential and utility. The limited range of the heavy machine guns makes them impractical for all but the most brave or foolhardy mech warriors. Thomason mirrored the maneuver, cutting left and taking a running shot at the gargoyle. That was just like him too. It didn't matter that he was in a mech 55 tons lighter, he was going to fire at the most threatening target available, no matter the risk to his life. Their Locust 2Cs, equipped with an alarming amount of laser weapons, flensed large sheets of armor from the side and rear of the Corvus they both targeted, revealing the substructure of the mech's torso, and began their circle back into formation. Without Question by Brian Young. Not wanting to be left out of the fun, Clan Hell's Horses sought to create their own variant of the Locust 2C on their production lines on New Oslo, which they had nabbed from Clan Wolf. Designated the Locust 2C7, this variant returned to 4 tons of ferrofibrous armor and 10 double heatsinks. Similar to the 2C6, it was intended to be a hunter of infantry and battle armor with the installation of 6 anti-personnel Gauss rifles helped in their accuracy by a head-mounted targeting computer. For general-purpose mayhem, an ER medium laser was set into that prized center torso location. 1 ton of ammunition in the left torso fed all 6 rifles, so that divides out to be just about 6 volleys if fired all at once. The 9-hex max range for the AP Gauss rifles was a selling point as it allowed the 2C7 to create a bit of a buffer between it and its prey, unlike the 2C6 which had to get very close. The ER medium laser's 7 damage, aided by the targeting computer, is what keeps this Locust variant in the game. If given the choice, I would definitely take this one over the 2C6, even with its limited ammunition. The Locust 2C7 was part of an overall effort by the Hell's Horses to expand their Tumen after moving into the Inner Sphere. As a result, the clan's antics against the wolves and others would feature the 2C7 in an infantry and vehicle support role. During the Word of Blake kerfuffle, Devlin Stone made use of clan forces, including the Hell's Horse's 11th Mechanized Cavalry, to clear out the Blakists on Mars in the Terran system. Their ability to cut down Word of Blake infantry and battle armor was invaluable in the waning days of the conflict. Odraz froze, skin slick with sweat, head swimming, hands aching as they clenched the controls, until an azure blast pounded the rock beside her, scattering debris and molten rock across her clint's right side. She snapped back into combat, swinging her torso to the left to see the Locust dart by once again. The savage coyote stepped out between them and leveled its arms. "Odraz, retrograde!" Misaki yelled as he delivered an alpha strike into the fleeing light mech. She watched the burning husk of the Locust grind to a halt against a pile of gray stone, satisfied it presented no threat, before swinging back around to find a Rifleman 2C ponderously descending the cliffside. Of the Dust of Dreams, Shrapnel No. 16, by David Rozzi. The Ghost Bear-produced Locust 2C8 was a 3064 arrival, which is a remarkably straightforward build. The installation of the more powerful 300XL engine pushed the movement profile of the 2C9 to 1218. This much speedier Locust could be put to work as a long-range harassing unit thanks to its center torso ER large laser. So we're looking at a light mech that can run up to 18 hexes, then fire a 10 damage weapon out to 25 additional hexes. If you're tactically minded, all sorts of ideas should be filling your head. If you're like me, your head is full of 80s cartoon theme songs and a desire to make Christmas cookies. Heat wasn't an issue, so the 2C8 could run around all day until a lucky Gauss round took it out. Give it a try sometime. The train starts to go off the rails in 3085 when Clan Jade Falcon produced the Locust 2C9. Built from endosteel around a 350 XXL engine and extra light gyro, the movement profile was shifted to 1421, making this the fastest Locust yet. 11 double heat sinks were added, and the armor was upgraded to 4.5 tons of inner sphere spec heavy ferrofibrous armor, which provided 89 points of protection. That's maxed out, by the way. I was tempted to grab a cash register noise and just run it on loop behind this section, but it might be a little irritating. Finally getting to the weaponry, the 2C9 carried a pair of medium improved heavy lasers split between the arms and a laser anti-missile system set into the Battlemech's head open critical. If you're not keeping track at home, we're looking at nearly 18 million C-bills worth of machinery to deliver two short-range 10 damage weapons at a very high rate of speed. For comparison, Megamech says the original Locust 2C totaled in at just over 2 million C-bills. So you could buy 9 of them, roughly, for the same price as the 2C9. As much as I would like to be nice to all the Locust 2C variants, one of the original parts of the mission statement was that it would be a low-cost machine. With the 2C9, we have a high-cost machine that moves faster but does less damage. Almost 9 times the cost, to be specific. I'm gonna stop, I'm getting angry. Go ahead, we're moving on. Our newest Locust 2C variant was the 2C10, and it arrives at our doorstep thanks to the fine and industrious folk at Korean Enterprises on Stewart. By 3148, Stewart is in the hands of the Wolf Empire, and with this new leadership came new opportunities. When an old Locust production line was identified as a likely candidate for a revamp, authorities decided it would be useful for the Wolves to have their own fresh supply of Locust 2Cs. The 2C10 was a return to form with a standard fusion engine, endosteel, and just 10 double heat sinks. Its fancy structural upgrade was the inclusion of 5 tons of reflective armor, which provided 80 points of protection and added anti-energy weapon properties. The 2C10's weapons loadout was back to a more traditional energy weapon theme, with 8 ER small lasers split between the arms to support the center torso ER medium laser. It may not be creative, but it is effective. None of these other alt variants can match the possible 47 damage out to 6 hexes, and I'm not going to apologize for it. The reflective armor is a neat addition, and with as functional as the rest of the mech is, the Locust 2C10 is a great platform to try out the reflective armor on the tabletop. Minifrog, what's our rating on this one?
I give it 3 mint Tic Tacs and 4 frosted sugar cookies. Out of 5.
Holding the medallion strung around her neck tightly with one hand and toying with the mech's controls with the other, Dawn sat eagerly in the command couch of the Locust 2C4, waiting for her trial of position to begin. It was not that often that a Jade Falcon got a second chance at becoming a mech warrior, and Dawn was not going to fail, even in such a ridiculous mech. A Question of Survival by Brian Young. Before we circle back and wrap all this up in a bug-shaped bow, I did take a crack at creating my own updated Locust 2C variant, which could offer a nice alternative to the excellence of the original while also staying true to the theme of the BattleMech. The totally unofficial and non-canon Locust 2C MF adopted two structural changes. The biggest was the implementation of the Clan XL engine, which bought mass for the other needed parts. The other major change was the use of a small cockpit, which bought us 1 ton of mass to play with. The 812 movement profile could be modified in the right moment to 816 thanks to the inclusion of a left torso mounted supercharger. After the superfluous bits like gyro and actuators were added, that left the weapons loadout. The build is dominated by a center torso large pulse laser which can do its accurate damage out to 20 hexes. The rest of the mass was devoted to 8 micro pulse lasers split between the arms that could do their 3 damage out to 3 hexes. So while the MF can be useful at all ranges thanks to the LPL, it will shine in close-up fights when those micro pulse lasers can needle away at targets or help infantry self-actualize as charred Christmas turkey. There aren't any heat issues with the 10 double heat sinks, as each of those micro pulse lasers only generates a single point of heat. An Alpha Strike on the run leaves the 2C MF at heat neutral. You can fire and run to your heart's content. If you want to give the Locust 2C MF a try, I've included the record sheet for it, as well as the Alpha Strike card in a free Dropbox link in the video notes below. If it's awful, let me know how wonderful it is anyway. Kerensky knows I don't have a big enough ego already. As we look at the Locust 2C and its various forms over the centuries, it's clear that those who have the opportunity to see the mech in action are pretty quick to identify its value. From the absorption of Clan Mongoose to the destruction of Clan Smoke Jaguar, and then of course the march of the wolves toward Terra, few passed up the opportunity to salvage the plucky Locust 2C and put it to work against new enemies. Even at the dawn of the IlClan era, where the victorious wolves sit upon Terra, ravens and sea foxes dominate the cosmos, and jade falcons lick their wounds, the Locust 2C not only persists but is thriving. Even in the periphery, far from the machinations of the great houses, production has continued thanks to the Scorpion Empire, who used their home-produced Locust 2Cs among other machines to take out the Hanseatic League in 3140. When frontline Omnimechs were disabled and lost, and there weren't any replacements, Con, Mag, and Scott assigned those dispossessed mech warriors to scout in Locust 2Cs, which ended up surpassing expectations against the mechs employed by the League. Reports from the fights in the Lyran side of the Inner Sphere have included the Locust C with some mixed results. When used recklessly, the Locust 2C can be caught and brought down by heavier mechs. That's kind of obvious. Careful deployment is always advised. In the fight on Tharkat in 3142, a battle ROM was recorded showing a Lyran gauntlet taking down a Locust 2C in a manner which served to feed propaganda efforts. This is probably one of the few times you'll ever read about the gauntlet actually doing something awesome, so good on you, little buddy. I'm curious what you think about the plucky Locust 2C. Is it a solid representative of the rather impressive 2C line, or are there better options for its role and weight? Is there a variant that you think best represents the machine in your tabletop playstyle? Let me know in the comments, we'll keep the discussion going. Thanks as always for coming out today. If you think the video deserves it and you want to show your support, the easiest way to do that is to hit the like button, subscribe, and even leave a comment. All those things make the YouTube algorithm happy. If you want to go one step further, direct support through Ko-fi and YouTube channel memberships are a great way to help ensure the nonsense keeps flowing. Just a couple of bucks a month can make a huge difference. I can't do this without you, and I appreciate it. If you would like to join the nonsense on the MechFrog Discord channel, we'd love to see you. I've included a link to the server in the video notes. It's the best way to find out what's coming up next week, talk to BattleTech fans, and even share your awesome mech paint jobs that could be included in videos. Otherwise, hang out with some pretty awesome people. With that, I'll say have a great week, please take care, go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.